right, now I know it is UFC 308 fight week, and we will get to that at some point. But what I wanted to cover in this video is the recent drama between Brendan Schaub and Nate Diaz, because one, I thought it would be fun, and two, there's a lot of different topics we can get into, a lot of different stuff regarding this whole drama. Okay, we're going to start with Schaub talking about CTE and Shane Carwin and all the rest of it. We'll get to Nate Diaz's response, and then after that we will get to Brendan Schaub's response to Nate Diaz in what was kind of an unhinged rant, but I will be honest, I do agree with him for large portions of that. Okay, I do not like Brendan Schaub. I'll just get that out of the way. Now, I used to quite a bit. I used to listen to The Fighter and The Kid religiously as I was operating a CNC machine, but I feel like over the course of the years, Schaub has changed quite a bit, and not necessarily for the better. And also, this issue, we are going to be looking at it kind of in a vacuum, okay? Because there's a lot of other shit Schaub has gotten over the years that I think he 100% deserves. And it's, you know, he tries to play the victim sometimes and all the rest of it, but a lot of the stuff that he gets, a lot of the shit he gets online is 100% earned. But either way, dude, we're going to start with, like I said, the part about CTE. You can see it up on screen. I've got it 1.5 speed. Not just so we can get through it a little bit quicker, as this will be a longer video, but please, Brendan Schaub, do not copyright me, okay? This is one of the reasons you've been getting shit online over the last couple of years, is because you are suing a very small YouTuber who used your content in what was very arguably fair use, okay? Now, you might try to portray that on your own show as being like a defamation case or something like that, but that's not what it is, right? It is a copyright infringement issue that you tried to abuse the system that YouTube has set in place, and then when it was appealed, you took it a step further, and now you are suing him in court. Okay, so please don't do that. I'm going to be agreeing with you for large portions of this video. With that being said, let us get into it with, like I said, the part about CTE and Shane Carwin and all the rest of it. And listen, man, there's going to be moments where I correct Schaub or point certain things out. I'm not trying to be callous or a dick. I'm trying to be descriptive and accurate. Either way, let's get into it.
Man, love that dude to death. Now he's suffering from it. You know, it came out, you know, in this antitrust lawsuit, you know, he's part of it, and Shane's paid a dear price. You're talking about one of the smartest guys to ever fight in combat sports. When he fought Brock Lesnar, he was still, I think, some sort of engineer. I don't get it wrong, but he's an engineer for the city of Greeley, and, you know, making six figures. And Dana called him, you know, I'm not saying anything I don't think he has said, but Dana called him and was just like, hey, man, you got to quit your job. Like, it's such a bad look. We're doing the countdown show and you're working a full-time job. And Shane was like, absolutely not. And he's like, what if we paid you this amount of money? He's like, no, man, because fighting's so short-sighted. It's so, the career's so short. Like, this is how I, you know, insurance for my kids and for my wife, and so I pay the bills. And he's like, he refused to. And
now, right there, I'm going to point something out. I find it to be absolutely fucking insane that somebody who had a legit career as an engineer, which is a very good paying job. I don't know how much he was getting paid exactly. Brendan Schaub said six figures. That's obviously quite vague. I used to work in construction, and I knew engineers that made, you know, $500,000 a year. Now, I'm not saying that's what Shane Carwin was making, but you also had a good, steady job with the city, right? Benefits and all the rest of it, like Schaub pointed out. I have no clue why you would want to then throw that away for a fight career. Now, Shane Carwin made pretty good money in the UFC, and we'll get to some of that later, but not when you factor in him having to stop his career like 20 years before he would normally retire. So I just, that I can't wrap my head around whatsoever. I think it was a horrible decision by Shane Carwin, in hindsight at the very least, but, you know, either way, we will continue.
Because of the way that we trained, because we were meatheads, we didn't know. You know, even the coaches, you know, we'd spar twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, like all out wars. And because of that.
Now, this right here, I'm sorry to pause it in succession 2 times quickly. Okay, I understand some people don't like that. This is not Brendan Schaub's video, though. This is my video. Okay, so either way, Schaub saying this is insane to me. And I feel like Schaub has this issue sometimes where he doesn't stop talking. He doesn't shut the fuck up when he really should. Like saying that the lawsuit over Unique is over defamation, and then that getting brought up in court because that's just a lie, and he's lying about the lawsuit publicly, right? It's very odd to me that when you're talking about a guy who has CTE and you are trying to couple it with a fighter pay discussion, which I don't think they should be coupled. I think it should be divorced a little bit, and I'll get into that as to why later on in the video. But why are you then going on to talk about how he probably got this issue with nothing to do with, like, that had nothing to do with the UFC, right? You are literally giving an alternate theory for UFC lawyers as to how Shane Carwin is the way he is today by talking about the gym wars you guys got into. And he goes into this multiple times throughout the course of this video in more depth, and it's just like, dude, shut the fuck up, right? Like, the UFC lawyers are gonna pick that shit apart if it ends up going to trial, right? Right now, the judge has shot down one settlement. They have offered a new settlement that, by the way, was agreed upon by the fighters. But crazy to me that he's going into that when the whole discussion is that Shane Carwin got CTE from the UFC.
That, Shane, he can't even keep a job, dude.
It's that bad right now?
Yeah, he went from being an engineer, to he can't be a bouncer at a fucking bar.
What the fuck?
Yeah, he can't. So that's what you're dealing with, Shane's in the thick of it, man. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. We tried to get him help. The UFC did fly him down to the Apex thing, and they tried to do stuff. So to Dana's credit, as soon as Dana found out, that's who I called. Through my contacts, I tried to get Shane some help, and as soon as Dana heard that Shane was having some issues, he flew Shane down there, and they tried to, I don't know enough about it. I don't know if anyone does, but.
By the way, I'll point out that I know a lot of people like to demonize Dana White, and there are legitimate criticisms you can have of Dana White. I'm not saying that there aren't, right? But Shane Carwin's on the lawsuit, on the class action lawsuit, and Dana White, rather than being very callous, which he could be, and he is oftentimes, when he hears that Shane Carwin's having issues, he flies him out to try to help him. So a lot of people just view Dana White as this like horrible, evil fucking dude, and maybe he is in a lot of circumstances, but you've got a guy that is actively going after you with 1,200 other fighters, and you're still trying to help him. I think it speaks to Dana's character, at the very least a little bit, okay?
He's the worst of the worst right now. And that was a guy who, terrible. One of the smartest people you've ever met, too, We used to laugh. God, we're idiots. We used to laugh because we'd get in our car and we wouldn't know how to get home after sparring. We'd call each other and laugh. And then
after sparring. See, this is not, listen, dude, I understand these are stories that you have with the guy, and it's hard to talk about because you're such good friends with him and you have all these memories with him. But when you've got a guy that is actively going after a company, claiming that the issues he is dealing with today was caused by his time at that company or that corporation, you shouldn't be sharing these stories about how you guys used to beat each other up so fucking badly you couldn't even find your way home. This is just, I said it earlier, but UFC lawyers will pick this shit out and they will use it against Shane Carwin because Brendan Schaub is offering up an alternative theory as to how he could get CTE. And the UFC is not responsible for anything a gym does or how a gym decides to run their training regimen. Like, if you want to spar 5 times a week to prepare for a fight, that's not on us. We didn't ask you to do that. That's not part of the job description. So it's Schaub needs to shut the fuck up sometimes, in my opinion. But either way, let's jump ahead roughly a minute to the next clip that I've got picked out here. And this is when they get into Fabricio Verdum, which is a short portion, but I still wanted to highlight it.
Oh, so who's this?
So this is part of the antitrust thing where Verdum came out and said he's dealing with CT symptoms.
Well, if I'm Fabricio, I suffered making concussions. I fear that during my career, I've suffered TBI and no symptoms common with TBI and CT, including irritability, anger, anxiety, insomnia, memory loss. I have many lesions and scarring in my brain.
This made me think of you because he says, I have a cyst that's centrally located within my brain, making surgery thus far impossible.
Okay, now, Fabricio Verdum, part of the class action lawsuit as well, apparently, claiming that, the concussions that he sustained fighting in the UFC are the cause of these issues that he's dealing with today. Now, again, I'm not trying to downplay shit or be callous or say that these guys are lying or anything like that, but I would, and I would imagine UFC lawyers are already going to bring this shit up, again, if it makes it to trial. But if we look at Fabricio Verdum's record, right, we'll go to the very beginning. He's got 4 fights here with the UFC from April 2007 to October 2008. So about a year and a half, 4 fights. And then, you know, fights in Strikeforce. And then from 2012 all the way up till 2020 against Gustafsson, he fights for the UFC for a total of 18 fights. Now, he's got 36 professional fights. 36 professional fights. And the UFC wasn't the beginning of your career, and it wasn't even the end of your career, man. If you were... This lawsuit's been going on for years. Years. If you were dealing with these issues, can you explain to me, or somebody explain to me, and I already know what the answer is going to be, but why the fuck would you then go to the PFL and fight? Why would you then go and fight in a bare knuckle MMA fight with Junior Dos Santos? Like, I can't fathom it. And people are going to say, well, because he didn't make enough money fighting in the UFC, so he had to go continue to fight because that's all he can do now. But why would you go actively make the thing you're dealing with worse? It doesn't make sense. And look, dude, I'm not trying to downplay this shit, but we're going to get into this in a little bit. A lot of these guys made a lot more money than I think you'd think they made. And it seems like a lot of the reason why they have no money today is because of poor financial decisions made by them. Okay? So, you know, well, I'll save that for in a little bit. But what the fuck, dude? You had all these crazy wars in Pride, right? We fought in Pride from 2005 up until 2006. And in that time, in a year and a half, roughly, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fucking fights. Bro, I don't know. Actually, this isn't a Pride organization, I don't think. Yes, it is. It is Pride. That's where he fought Emelianenko and subbed him. Bro, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights in a year and a half in Pride, where you had wars, 3-round wars with guys like this, right? I mean, how are we determining where you acquired your brain damage is what I want to know. And now I understand that, right? Pride doesn't exist. The UFC bought him out, so they can't really sue Pride, can they? Can't sue Strikeforce because Strikeforce is no longer as well. I think the UFC bought them as well. So I guess really all they can go after is the UFC. But why are you making it worse when you were claiming that you're suffering from these issues? It's crazy to me. Crazy. Okay. I just wanted to highlight that because this is kind of a bit of a theme that we see with a lot of these guys that are on the class action lawsuit. And we're going to get into that in a little bit with somebody who is, I don't think, part of the class action, but has a different lawsuit against the UFC altogether. But I want to play this clip for you now.
And, you know, it's all I do. You know, I love the UFC and all the opportunities they've given me. But when I talk about fighter pay and compensation, there's not enough money in the fucking world.
I'll just point this out as he's, you know, trying to gather himself. And listen, dude, Schaub's easy to make fun of. I'm going to try and refrain from that. There's going to be times where I can't help myself, more towards the Nate Diaz response video, but, you know, it's a sad topic, okay? If you got a friend, it's something that it could be, I guess, comparable is like, you know, if you lost a friend, not even that they're dead, but to drug addiction or some shit, it's a tough, you know, to see the guy that you once knew go from that to what he is now. It's like, goddamn, you know, it sucks. But when he says, like, there's not enough money in the fucking world, right? They all knew what I don't think that the details of CTE and all the rest of it was known 12 years ago, right? But if you just use a little bit of common sense, I mean, listen, in 2012, I knew that if you get concussions, that's not good for your fucking brain. You know, we had a buddy that by the time we were 15, 16, he had 4 or 5 concussions from various sports and whatever. And he was the kind of guy that if he got hit in the head by anything, he would drop immediately. It was like Chuck Liddell towards the end of his career, but he was 15 years old, you know, and that was before 2012. We knew it was bad then, obviously. Now, you might not be able to comprehend all the long-term repercussions and things like that, but it's not like you were a child who's unable to consent when you sign these contracts. Okay, that's something that I just want to point out. Again, I'm not trying to fucking downplay it, dude. I'm just trying to point out they all knew how much money they were signing up for. And the thing is that this is why I think fighter pay and, you know, the CTE discussion are not necessarily linked and should maybe be divorced from one another is because a lot of these guys aren't even doing it for money, dude. They're doing it for glory. Why would Shane Carwin, a guy with a 6-figure career, go fight dudes like Brock Lesnar? You know, it's not because he needs the fucking money. Okay, well, he might have, and we'll get into that later. Again, I think a lot of these guys made poor financial decisions, but it's obviously sad, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but there are just things that I feel the need to point out here. Call me autistic or whatever the fuck you want to do it, but let's continue.
Like Vince McMahon. It's like, remember McMahon, that meme? He's all, there's not enough money in the world if you ask Shane Carwin if he could do it again. If you give him $1 billion. Shane's really bad.
Yes, but...
Bring up what Shane said. There you go. Click on that declaration of Shane Carwin. Ready for this? All right. Keep going down.
Let me click on the entire thing.
Yeah. Now, you'll hear some guys that say they have CT and we blow it off, right? Shane's a former world champion and also didn't have that long of a career overall. Shane didn't have a ton of fights. So he said, well, fighting for these guys suffered many significant injuries and concussions. After that, during my career, I suffered traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, I need to slow it down now because Schaub tries to speed read and he has, you know, he's not the best speaker in the world. So it kind of gets jumbled together. So I'll slow it down a little bit here.
Depression, mood swings, irritability, cognitive tests, conductive at the Cleveland Clinic. I've suffered damage to my prefrontal cortex and left hemisphere. I spent days in bed suffering from bouts of paranoia and fear and anxiety. I've been hospitalized twice to treat addiction. Here, stay there. Go up. Ready for this? Despite... No, it's so hard for me to... Fuck. I'll get there. Hold on. Despite having a degree in engineering from Colorado School of Mines, I've been unable to maintain adequate focus to hold down my engineering job. I face serious challenging, meaning basic.
Damn.
Former world champ.
Now, again, dude, people are going to... But there's going to be people in the comment section that, for the most part, are anti-UFC, that are upset about what I'm saying. Again, I'm just being fucking descriptive, dude. I'm not trying to downplay whatever Shane Carwin is dealing with, okay? I assure you that. However, Brendan Schaub emphasizes the second time he said it now that he was a former champion. To point out that he made a lot of money, or should have made a lot of money. Right now, again, dude, I'm not trying to... Shane Carwin was never a champion, at least not in the UFC. He was an interim champion, right? And then he had one title fight, one real title fight against Brock Lesnar. And then that was it. So, you know, I'm just trying to be descriptive. He wasn't like this champion that was defending and, you know, having all these big pay-per-views and shit like that. He was a guy that won the interim title and didn't unify it. So, in reality, when we look at his career, there was a few fights that could have been big paydays, and we're going to get to that because I found an old Reddit post from Shane Carwin about how much money he made. But I just wanted to point that out. Again, I'm not being a dick. I'm being descriptive, okay?
I face serious challenges in meeting basic everyday expenses for food, shelter. Fuck. His kids. Give me a break.
All right. Now, obviously a very sad story. Very sad story. I already pointed out the fact that he wasn't champion, but what I do want to point out is that when Shane Carwin fought Brock Lesnar, you know, but by the sounds of it, you would think he made like no money whatsoever. All right. And yeah, that's just not the case. I looked up what his purse was, and I found this Reddit post that linked to a Shane Carwin Reddit post. I don't know if I'm using the correct terms. I don't really use Reddit, but you know, when we look at this here, apparently my account's been suspended. I've never fucking used it, but either way, doesn't matter. That's besides the point. Over on the UG, they are saying that I made $2 million for the Lesnar fight. I guess I need to remember that this is not just a forum, but people are actually reading this stuff. What I meant was, Dana can say whatever he wants about me. He paid me over $2 million. I would not lie about that amount because Uncle Sam got their cut, and I have 2 ex-wives, one of which was in the room when a bulk of that cash was being handed over. If you have ever been through a divorce and hearings about child support, your financial information is on the record and combed through by courts, officers, and the courts, and so forth. I think it might be old news to talk about the economics of my era because the times have changed. Here's what I recall for the Lesnar fight. And then he goes on to say the bout agreement was 40-40, which is very low considering he wasn't interim champion. But remember, we are in, what year was that? 2010. Okay, 2010. Here we go. No, we were looking at the post. My bad. Sorry. He breaks it down. 40-40, contractual bonus, whatever, 60 to in between 30 and 65,000, and then a bonus from Lorenzo and Dana of over $1.25 million, and then he breaks down all the like sponsors and shit like that. So, you know, I mean, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said they act like they got paid nothing. Meanwhile, it offers you an explanation for how he's got no money today, and it's not necessarily because of the UFC, dude. 2 ex-wives went through divorce hearings, child support, all that shit, you know. And while it's unfortunate that Shane Carwin is going through that, he also made those decisions himself. He decided to get married to those individuals. He decided to have kids, whatever, children with those individuals. They got divorced. It didn't work out. All the rest of it. This is not on the UFC, man. And you had a fantastic career that you basically threw away. I don't understand it. Okay. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But what this reminds me of is Mark Hunt. Okay. Mark Hunt is suing the UFC for the Brock Lesnar fight, which, by the way, he was wronged in that fight. Because Brock Lesnar absolutely was on gear. USADA knew he was on gear. They hid the test results until after the fight. So they allowed Mark Hunt to go in there and fight a juiced up Brock Lesnar because they didn't want to lose another fight on UFC 200. If I'm not mistaken, that was UFC 200. And John Jones had already, you know, popped and been removed from the card due to steroids. So it was shitty of the UFC, or USADA rather, to do that. And I agree with that. But Mark Hunt now, who is like poor and acts like he made no fucking money, is still on the top 20 highest UFC paid athletes ever list. He made like $10 million throughout the course of his career, despite never being a champion, going 8-1-1. Literally did not have a winning record, right? Yeah, made about $10 million. And he was in the UFC for, I think, 8 years, so averaging over $1 million a year. But he complains that he's got no money and he's going after the UFC. Basically, he spent all of his fucking career earnings on this lawsuit when he should have just taken the money and ran. Because if you look at his purses from his UFC fights, he was making like $1 million almost every single fight. But like I said, not a champion ever or anything like that. And to me, it just seems like poor financial decisions that these guys make, you know. It's crazy to me, man. And in here we see Schaub talks about Carwin's wrestling and football background, right? And 14 pro MMA fights, 6 of them being in the UFC, but for sure it's the UFC that did this. And like, you know, similar to Mark Hunt had what, 18 fights in the UFC. 18 fights in the UFC. Okay. He had 29 fights altogether, which means he had 11 fights outside the UFC. But not just that, man. This guy had an extensive kickboxing record as well. So you took a ton of damage before the UFC. You took damage in the UFC. You took damage after the UFC. Yet you're going after the UFC. It's just, you know, I don't think that these guys, this is why I don't know why they couple the CTE discussion with fighter pay. You're not able to prove where you acquired that damage, especially when you have a career like Mark Hunt or a career like Shane Carwin, who, you know, unfortunately now it gets talked about how he had crazy fucking gym wars. Okay? Either way, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. I know I'm pissing people off right now, dude, talking about the CTE issue like that, but I like to give people agency. I believe that they can make their own decisions, and if you decide that making $2 million is worth getting your head knocked around by a guy like Brock Lesnar when you had a perfectly good career outside the UFC, That's on you to make that decision, you know. I mean, it's either way. Let's continue.
He said this would truly be life-changing money for me and other members of the class. These funds would allow me to obtain healthcare I need to keep a roof over my head and food on the table. Sad reality is the funds years from now may be no use to me. I need these funds now.
Just desperately. That's fucking crazy.
Again, you're not talking about a kid from the favelas who came from nothing.
No, you're talking about a guy that had a 6-figure-a-year career as a fucking engineer, right? It makes sense for a guy like Alex Pajeda coming from the fucking jungle, an alcoholic as a teen, working at a tire shop, to be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna take damage for money. A guy like Charles Oliveira, be like, yeah, I'm gonna take damage for money. Or name any of them, right? Even a poor American kid. But someone that didn't come from the favelas, but came from like a ghetto or fucking Appalachia or some shit. I don't even know if I said that correctly. It doesn't matter. Not a dude that is set. Shane Carwin was set. Okay?
You're talking about a guy in a room full of smart, educated people would run circles around them. Can't afford food and transportation because of the damage he took fighting the UFC.
See,
I know it's not fun to talk about. I know, let's talk about...
And Schaub even says it there outright. He's now, after offering all these explanations as to how Shane Carwin could have received head trauma, pins it on the time in the UFC, which was not even a majority of his MMA career, let alone all the other shit. Okay? But pointing out that he was a very well-educated and well-educated guy and had this job and shit does not help his matter. It makes people be like, what the fuck? Like, this is the contrast, in my opinion, between being educated and being intelligent in terms of like common sense. You had a degree, a good career that made you more money than like 90% of your countrymen. Yet you decided for a few extra million in the immediate, which I understand to a lot of people, it's going to be like, well, fuck, I would do it for 2 million, and I would. I'm sure a lot of you would, right? But that's the immediate. If you're thinking about the long term with a guy that has an engineering job, if you do the math, the amount of time that he has shaved off his engineering career, he's probably broke even, if that. He's probably worse off now. You would work for 40 years. I said the guy that made $500,000 earlier as an engineer, but let's say Shane Carwin made like high ones. Or 2, or even 1, bro. You're making 4 to what, 6 million over the course of your career as an engineer, and for 2 million, you shaved off 20 years of your fucking career. You're worse off financially speaking than you would have been. So I'm not trying to be shitty, dude, but I just don't understand it. And I understand why Schaub would be emotional about this and upset by this and all the rest of it, because look, I can look at it a little bit more objectively, I think, because I'm not, right? Like, Shane Carwin's not my friend, so I'm divorced from the situation a little bit, but fucking crazy to me that someone with a job like that, a career like that's not even a job, bro. That's a career. That's something that you went to university for, like they talked about, Colorado University for mines or whatever the fuck it is. That's a career, and you just went, whatever, dude. I'll make a bunch of money right now, and have to fork over a bunch of it to my wife or ex-wife and child and all the rest of it. It's just, to me, a lot of the people on that class action lawsuit made poor financial decisions, and they felt they could get in on something that might get them a quick payday, because oftentimes class action lawsuits are very in favor of the lawyer participating in them, okay? Because you've got a lawyer, or let's even say 5 lawyers. Let's say there's a team of lawyers, right? And you've got the class, say the settlement amount is $1 million. The lawyers take 30% of that. So if you've got 100 people on the class action lawsuit, but there's 5 lawyers taking 30%, like, they end up making more money. And in this case, where you've got 1,200 complainants, and the first settlement that was offered, on average, would have given each fighter about $200,000. Those lawyers are fucking laughing, okay? Because they're making a shit ton of money. Either way, dude, let's continue. Few more clips in this episode, and then we will get to Nate Diaz's response. And again, I want to stress, I understand why one would be emotional about this topic, especially if you were friends or, close with the person. that is saying these things about themselves, right?
It's tough. You're fighting an animal that you don't know how to deal with. The UFC is such a monster. And the reason I say UFC, and it's all leagues, it's because UFC is the creme de la creme. If you're going to sue, if you played football, you're not suing the CFL. You're not suing the Arena League. You're suing the top dogs because you get the most money because they're the most successful. It's kudos to Dana. There's a reason why the UFC is the face of this. It's because they're the top dogs. They're the monopoly, and they should be. There's nothing wrong with being a monopoly. The issue is,
I threw this in here only to lighten the mood just a little bit. Okay, I said I would try to refrain from making fun of Schaub, at least in this video, as it is a heavy topic, but there is literally something wrong with being a monopoly, Schaub. That's what the whole fucking class action lawsuit is about. This is why when you hear Schaub talking about this issue, he is, and not intentionally even, but he is very biased towards one side. He doesn't even know what the fucking lawsuit's about. What does he think this lawsuit is? The UFC just retroactively paying guys because they took more damage than they initially thought? Like, you literally can't have a monopoly in the fucking United States of America. This is why there's a lawsuit, Schaub. Okay? So no, there is something wrong. Just wanted to include that because this is why he's just so memeable, man. And, I just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. We're listening to him talk about some pretty heavy shit. Either way, let's continue.
that's the thing. Shane needs money now. This is going to take forever, dude.
This looks like the last page.
He goes, I also understand the UFC has publicly vowed to appeal any trial verdict against it, and that entry of any judgment in the case and resolution of those appeals could take several years, which he does not have. So even if the fighters won at trial and on appeal, any recovery would likely be delayed for several years. This is why I'm not a billionaire or a mega millionaire. I do all right, I'm not crushing it. I do good, right? I do well. If I'm Dana, if I'm the UFC, they're damn near billionaires. I'm involved with Fertitas, Fertitas are billionaires. I get you got this case going on. I just don't understand when you have all that going on, Shane, he has a case here. How do you not just go, all right, for the rest, there's gonna be a few outlier cases here of guys that have really bad.
He doesn't even know what the case is about. Him even saying that right there, he's got a case here. He has no idea what it's even about, man.
Nobody probably has it worse than Shane. How do you not just go, I get it, dude, boom, yeah. 10, 15 mil, your troubles. How can you not just step back for a second? I know sharks, savages, CEOs, all that shit, entrepreneurs, I get all that, and you guys deserve it all. You did it. Can we be human for a fucking second? Could you just be a fucking human being for a second and go, here, dude, here, man, we know. You don't have to do it publicly. Just from fucking human to human, man. This guy put his life on the line. I've seen it, dude. I was with him every step of the way from day fucking one. He's such a good person. How can you not just go, yeah, man, that's terrible. You can't afford housing and food. You lost your wife. The kids aren't doing great. Here you go. Don't worry about it. That's pennies to these guys.
Nah, listen, I understand the thought. Okay, I understand the thought, but this to me is just like an example of somebody who has no fucking idea how court works, which is probably why maybe Brendan Schaub legitimately thought he was suing Unique for defamation. I don't know, but you can't just do that, right? Shane Carwin is a part of a class action lawsuit with 1,200 fucking fighters. Okay, 1,200 fighters. You can't just give one of them a $15 million check because, one, a lawyer could argue that that's bribery. You're trying to bribe the complainants and get them off some of the more heartbreaking stories, perhaps, trying to get them off of the lawsuit so that, I don't know, you look better and try, I don't know what the thing is there, but, once it's in the courts, it's kind of like you can't just do under the table. Like the settlement offers need to be approved by the fucking judge, which is why we've already seen one get shot down. So that you can't just do that, right? You can't just go to one out of the 1,200 fighters, be like, here's a fat check. If things were different, maybe if Shane, it's a nice thought. I understand it. But I just feel like Schaub has no fucking idea how this shit works. And he kind of proved that by talking about how, it's okay to be a monopoly. It's wild to me. There would need to be paperwork involved, right? And even, let's say it got out, not even the lawyer being like, the UFC's bribing complainants, but also every other fighter would be like, what the fuck, bro? It's just not how it works, man. It's not how it works. Also, you could go, like I said, there would have to be a ton of paperwork involved. if they just went and handed Shane Carwin a check without doing the proper like legal process, Shane Carwin could just stay on the lawsuit and get more money from them later on. So it's just, you know, this is what I mean by Schaub's a little bit biased in this sense. Now, I get the emotional, being emotional and whatnot because of it. You're buddies with the guy and all the rest of it. And that's not what I'm going at. I'm going at his factual claims, or his attempt at factual claims. But it's just like, holy fuck, dude. You think it's okay to be a monopoly? You think Shane Carwin is suing him because of CTE, or because it's just, that's a part of it, because the way, dude. Let's continue.
I guarantee somebody from the UFC is going to see this. I guarantee you.
Yeah, they will, dude, and they're going to use what you said again. The guy's got enough self-awareness to understand that somebody from the UFC is going to watch his video, but not enough self-awareness to think, maybe I shouldn't talk about the way we used to fucking try and kill each other in sparring 3 times a week.
Can you just be fucking human for a second and save somebody's life? He doesn't have that long. Then what happens if, God forbid, he does pass? Who knows how? Then what? Then what do you think happens to the case? You think that helps you? If you want to put your business hat on, you think that helps you?
Look, this is gonna be, this sounds so callous. I'm not trying to be, okay? I'm just trying to dispute some of the shit he says so I can go agree with him a bunch later. But hearing him talk about this kind of shit kind of bothers me a little bit, because I do like legal shit. It's fun to me. I watch trials for fun, okay? This is the sad reality, dude. Shane Carwin offing himself might actually, it's just one less complainant. It would be sad, obviously, but like, how many NFL dudes have offed themselves or killed people or done some fucked up shit because of CTE? The NFL makes way more fucking money than the UFC. It didn't hurt them, bro. Now, there wasn't a class action lawsuit because I believe the NFL's unionized, but it's also a different environment. You've got teams, right? You've got teams. I've got like, well, I don't know how many people are on a fucking football team, dude. I don't watch football, but you know, this is an individual sport. This is why talking about this shit is a lot more difficult and complicated than talking about something like football or basketball or the NHL or anything like that. And I know that a lot of people like Luke Thomas like to just be like, oh, well, the Ali Act. You know, there's problems with the fucking Ali Act. Like, a lot. You know? There's boxers that don't like the Ali Act. You know, so just making everything unionized doesn't solve all the problems, okay? Unions are not inherently a good thing. They're not inherently bad either. But I've seen unions in my own country, and obviously not to do with professional sports, but like kind of fuck over industries a little bit, where they advocate and ask for so much money for the employees, where that industry becomes no longer sustainable because they're not actually you know. So I understand Schaub thinking the way he does about this, and I understand him crying about it, which is ultimately what this ends up all being about. But he made a lot of errors here, you know. I do agree with him. It's very sad that this happens to guys, especially guys that you know, and all the rest of it. But you know, it's just, I feel like he doesn't know how a lot of this shit works. But it doesn't matter. He doesn't need to. He can still talk about how it makes him feel and all the rest of it. And you know, that's ultimately what he did. So either way, dude, let us jump to the Nate Diaz portion of this, the fun portion of this, okay? Because while this is fun for me to go over and pick apart, and I get it, maybe I'm calloused or whatever, but this next portion was both funny and fun and all the rest of it. So let's lighten the mood a little bit, okay? All right, now here we have the infamous tweet from Nate Diaz that sparked off one of the best rants of 2024. Again, dude, I'm not a massive fan of Brendan Schaub. I'm just not. But what he does in response to this, I absolutely fucking loved it, because I feel like he said a lot of shit that a lot of people actually think about Nate Diaz that are just kind of hesitant, maybe, to say them because Nate Diaz has such a cult-like following. I would imagine I'm going to catch shit for this in the comments below, because there are so many fans of Nate Diaz. And look, dude, in terms of watching the fights, like, I'm a fan of Nate Diaz, but I oftentimes find myself shaking my head at him. I did think that Nate Diaz was a lot cooler as I was younger, but as you get a bit older, some of the shit he does, you're like, okay, you know, but either way. So very simple, 6 words: Brendan the big ol' pussy Schaub, with a crying emoji. Now, I'm gonna be listen, Schaub tries to refrain from doing this in his response video, but I don't have to. I don't have any fucking relationships with any fighters or anything like that, so I don't care. I don't have to save face. Nate Diaz, to me, it's odd that he would even pick this out and to make fun of. I think that Nate Diaz, it's one of those like coping mechanisms where you make fun of something to not address the reality that you've got that shit, you know. Nate Diaz wants to pretend that CTE doesn't fucking exist and it's not a sad thing and all the rest of it, because he probably knows from watching his brother, watching him, watching the guys that he... Look, if you go back, and I'll probably double up and say this again at some point in the video when we're watching Schaub's rant, if you go back to The Ultimate Fighter 5, Season 5, which is the moment that a lot of people were introduced to Nate Diaz for the first time, he still has that speech impediment that he talks about. Sorry. Isn't that ironic? But he's a lot easier to understand than he is today. It is not just because he's got a speech issue. It's very clearly, in my opinion, due to, and it's not because he's stoned all the time. People that think that it's anything to do with being stoned are people that probably have not smoked weed, you know, to be quite honest. So I think it's pretty clear that Nate Diaz has suffered deeply due to head trauma. So I think that this is not projection, but I think this is Nate Diaz coping, making fun of somebody for bringing up that very sad reality, because he does not want to admit in his you know, internally within himself that this is probably something he's going to have to deal with. Okay, now we immediately get a tweet response from Brendan Schaub. Oh buddy, I got 20 pounds on you, so I'm not far off. I'll snap your neck. Set up a grappling match and let me know how it goes for you. Have one of your handlers read this tweet and get back to me. Now, I do want to point something out, okay? Couple things. This is why Schaub is so fucking memeable, so easy to make fun of. 20 pounds is a stretch, Schaub. You're probably like 40, 50 pounds heavier than him, but that's besides the point, I guess. Set up a grappling match and let me know how it goes for you. Why the fuck would Nate Diaz have to tell you how your grappling match goes? Yeah, you'd be there, my guy. I don't get it. Why would he have to tell you, let me know how it goes for you? Like, you'll have one of your handlers read this tweet and get back to me. Now, I think a lot of people kind of missed this or glossed over it. It's hard to tell, because I don't know if Schaub's that malicious, although he appears to be in the next 20 minutes that we're going to get through. He just had this whole segment where he multiple times got broken up and cried and had to take breaks and things like that, talking about CTE. Now, I just want to ask you guys if you think this is the case, but I would ask Schaub this as well if I had the chance to. You were just crying about brain, and I'm not saying this to make fun of you, but I'm being descriptive. You're crying about brain trauma. But are we now making fun of Nate Diaz for not being able to read because of brain trauma? That's what it seemed like to me, because that's where my mind went immediately. You know, kind of like when Conor made fun of Floyd for not being able to read, and that is some of the best leaked audio of all time. I don't like Charlemagne the God, but thank fucking God for him in that instance. But I mean, you were just so torn up and hurt about this topic that is very touching, or, you know, sad and whatever, all the rest of it. You were touched by it. And then you make fun of a guy for not being able to read. Oh, you know, and he mentioned the fucking childhood trauma shit too, which I thought was odd. I understand him, well, that's later, but still. It was funny to me, but also a little weird. Either way, dude, the tweets are not much. Let's get to the real content, okay? I told you this was going to be a longer one. I wanted to go into it deep. No diddy. Brendan Schaub's response video to Nate Diaz. Let's get to that right now. All right, now we are at the grand finale. Finally, again, I apologize. I told you this would be a longer one. I like to do long form content like this because I feel less rushed, and I think we can get into things in a little bit more depth. Let's get into it. Now, I want to point out I am what, 3 minutes into his rant of what he said was not going to be a long rant. Okay. It ended up lasting until almost the 22-minute mark, which is fine. You know, it provided a lot of good content. Now, I'm not going to play the whole thing, obviously, but I picked out moments that I thought I could, you know, talk about. So let's get started right away.
Here's how I feel about it. This is just internet gossip, right? This gets him trending. He doesn't have a lot going on. Didn't get paid for the Masvidal fight. Probably doesn't know what he's going to do next. Conor, he's probably waiting on that. Conor's tied up with the TV right deal, so he's probably banking on that. He fought Masvidal, lost to Jake Paul, right? That's a big blow to his ego. So I guess he needs to do this to stay current. I retired 15 years ago, man. That being said, that's social media. This isn't real. Because here's what's real. I will fuck you up. That's real. I'm not asking for this. I don't want to fuck him up. I'm not trying to fuck him up. End of the day, if he walked in right now, I said, Chin, Case, can you guys leave? Only one of us is going to walk out unscathed. And it's
now, he says unscathed. It's unscathed. I understand Schaub's got some issues pronouncing certain words, but still, what he said here is true. You know, like I said it earlier, it's real easy to make fun of Brendan Schaub. Really easy. He just provides constant material for basically everybody. But he's still he's a monster. He's huge. Okay, and he is trained. And while he wasn't the best fighter ever, he's a fucking heavyweight, like a legit heavyweight who can grapple, who can decently strike. And if he, I mean, bro, Nate Diaz used to get ragdolled by lightweights. I'm talking Benson Henderson ragdolled him. Rory McDonald was a welterweight, but he ragdolled him. Right? Nate struggled with dudes that were quite a bit stronger than him and wanted to grapple. And Schaub is way fucking bigger than those guys. And while maybe he's not as technically sound as a Benson Henderson or a Rory McDonald, there's weight classes for a reason, my guy. You know? There's weight classes for a reason. He would fuck up Nate Diaz. And I don't think he would break much of a sweat. Nate might, you know, I don't know. There might be people that disagree with this, but I don't see how anybody could at this point. Brendan Schaub would fuck Nate Diaz up, point blank, period.
To me, every fucking day of the week, 365 days a year, I will snap his fucking neck. I know. What's his fucking area code? 209? I know, 209. I get all that. Very cool. None of that is real. Oh, but he did great against Donald Cerrone. Did you see him? Leon Edwards. Dude, he's had some great fights. Tough dude. I don't give a fuck. I'm 245 pounds, trained black belt, top 10 UFC.
Dude, Brendan Schaub does that thing. Sorry to pause it again. Brendan Schaub does that thing where you're in the shower, bro, and you know you're in an argument with somebody. Like outside the shower, I mean, but in some aspect of your life, you know you're in a conflict with somebody. And you start hyping yourself up. You're like, yeah, I'm going to say this, and they're going to say that, and then I'll say this back. And if they say this instead, well, I'll say that back. And if they say that instead, well, then I'll say that back. Schaub is doing well, I do it at least. I'm sure many of you guys do too, mentally in the shower, preparing for conflict. But he's doing it on a podcast, out loud, and it's just funny. He's coming up with all these things. Later on, he goes to talk about some other weird shit that he thinks people would bring up, which we'll get to. But, you know, he's covering all his bases, but he's, like I said, doing what I would do in the shower, just out loud in front of a camera. He's having a full-on conversation with himself and trying his best to counter any counterpoint that might come his way. I just found it kind of funny, but either way.
UFC heavyweight in the world at one point. I'm not out of shape. I'm a fucking beast when it comes down to, I know, I tell jokes, I do crazy shit, I made some mistakes. Oh, he got knocked out by No Garo, he's into trucks. I get all that, firing the kids.
Bro, what the fuck does you being into trucks have anything to do with this? That's what I was talking about. I didn't realize it came so quickly after. Right? He's coming up with all the counters that one might have. But what the fuck does you being into trucks have anything to do with you not knowing how to fight? It's just so fucking weird.
Jokes, I do crazy shit, I made some mistakes. Oh, he got knocked out by No Garo, he's into trucks. I get all that, firing the kids, silly dude. I get all that. At the end of the day, the way this works, I'm not a civilian like the rest of his goons around.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm not this fake gangster. I don't go looking for fights. I know I'm tough. I don't have to get on Twitter and blast it out and prove it every day because I'm insecure because whatever shit he has going on with his childhood trauma. I don't have to do that. At the end of the day, I will twist your fucking neck off. Ask your boys. There's many of guys that you fucks with that I've rolled with. Ask them how it went. Go ahead and ask them. Very close guys to you. Ask them how it went, bud. That's real. This isn't real. And the difference between you and I, Nate, a million fucking things, don't get me started. But the difference between you and I, if you start crying because your brother who has CT, the difference between you and I is if your brother, and Shane's a brother to me, if your actual fucking brother came out and started getting emotional, or if you started coming out getting emotional about your brother's issues with CT and fighting and all this shit, because we know he has his issues, I would support you, even though you've been addicted to me the entire time.
Now, that was, I think in the moment, he's clearly heated. Later on, when they go to, when he starts to wrap this up, you can hear the, like, trembling might not be the right word, because you can hear that when somebody's about to cry. Maybe he was about to cry out of anger, but you can hear him, like, trembling in his voice and see him visibly shaking. But I mean, it was odd of him to throw a shot at Nate Diaz there for having CTE after how this all started. He does walk it back a little bit later, and I guess he wasn't actually making fun of Nick. He was just being, like I've been throughout the course of this video, descriptive, right? He was just pointing it out that your brother clearly struggles with shit, not just the CTE, or maybe it is the CTE and this is just an aspect of it, like they brought up with Shane Carwin, but Nate Diaz has dealt with addiction issues and things like that as well, right? Alcoholism and whatever else. So, it was, you can tell he's heated, but he's right, dude. Look, he's right. I know there's a lot of Nate Diaz fans out there. He's a fucking goof sometimes, okay? He just is. And yes, he'd fuck me up. I'm not Brendan Schaub, but I don't know, man. It's fucking weird. Either way, let's skip ahead just a little bit here. Right there, and we will continue on.
If your entire narrative, oh, fuck the man. Bud, you've been paid more than 99% of the fighters. Cut the bullshit. You're no different than Kobe Compton, this MAGA shit. It's all fake, bud. You're not fooling anybody. I've seen how the sausage is made. You're not tough to me. I know tough guys. Tough guys don't get on the internet and tweet at another grown fucking man who beat the shit out of them when they're crying or they get emotional because their friend of 20 fucking years is having major issues, suicidal thoughts. That's pussy. That's the difference between you and I. I'm not some moron who buys into your tough guy narrative, bud. I don't give a fuck you're from Sacramento. That's your biggest thing? That's it? That's the narrative? I know tough guys from Sacramento. What are you gonna do, Nate?
Oh, jeez.
What are you gonna do? Volume punch me, motherfucker?
Listen, dude, it's a decent... Listen, man. He's fucking right, dude. I know I'm gonna piss people off with this take, just like I pissed people off with the first take. I don't give a fuck. Nate Diaz is a fake gangster. This was how he got into jiu-jitsu and shit like that, was getting away from street life, yet he acts like he never left it. By the way, he got into it very young. It's not even like he was some fucking, actual gangster yet. That, like Brian Ortega, dude, he made a choice, like the Modelo ad says. But he still acts like he's from the street. It's very weird to me that he, at the same time, tried to get away from it, but then will glamorize it. And maybe that's why. Because a lot of people that are actually from that life and live that shit are not going to glamorize it. They act in a certain way. But Nate Diaz is over the top, and it's fucking cringe, man. It just is. I mean, this might be a hot take, but it just is. And most of the time, when he does something that his fans think is cool and all the rest of it, it's just him being a fucking idiot. Okay? Does he have some funny lines and shit? Yeah, man. Like, he does. I can think of countless moments. I mean, fucking, well, you're playing touch butt in the park with that dork with the ponytail, and I'm the one that ain't gonna train a partners. I don't think so. You seem to have it all figured out when you're fighting midgets and shit like that, right? Funny lines, but all the fake gangster shit to me is fucking cringe. I think Schaub's correct. I just think he is. But let's continue.
That's what you're gonna do? What are you gonna do? Out-grapple me? In what fucking sense? What world are you living in? This is the real world. Now, if you're doing this because you fancy yourself a fisticuffs, if you fancy yourself, you wanna actually grapple me, I'm not hard to get a hold of. Pull the fuck up.
Now again, this is another example of Schaub being very memeable. If you fancy yourself a fisticuffs and you want to grapple me, like, what the fuck, bro? You ask him, you challenge him to a fist fight, and then you want to have a grappling match? I mean, listen, it's just a little thing I thought I'd throw in there because it's funny that he goes from, you want to fucking fight, basically. That's what fisticuff means, dude. We're gonna throw hands, okay? And then you go, if you want to actually grapple me, motherfucker, you know, listen, I think he's just too heated now to understand what he's saying, although he makes these kind of mistakes on a regular basis. So maybe that's not the case. Okay, maybe that's not.
And you can show up with all your boys, do all that stuff. But what a real man will do is pull up one-on-one. I don't have a posse. I don't need one, bud. I'll drop my kid off at fucking practice, roll over, twist your fucking neck off, and then pick him up just in time unscathed with a Diet Coke.
There's that unscathed again.
And that's how this goes for the rest of your fucking life, bud. Whenever I want. I didn't ask for this.
Dude, it's so condescending. He's like, oh, he's like a word away from saying that he would, you know. We're an hour in and I still don't think I can say it. He's getting at, I can do whatever the fuck I want to and there's nothing you can do about it, basically. I was gonna, you know, maybe something Justin Gaethje's brought up before, but he's fucking right, dude. And I've said this like 5 times already. But there's no way this was all off the top of the dome for me. Maybe the way in which he's saying it, like it's not scripted per se, but I mean that all these things he's saying are true about Nate, and I feel like a lot of people think it, but they don't want to say it because of the cult-like following that the Diaz brothers have accumulated over the years, right? I feel like all of these things are things that he's probably thought about Nate Diaz before, and many other people have as well, and he's just kept to himself because he didn't want to be a fucking dick. But also, he's right about the posse shit. That shit is as cringe as it fucking gets, dude. They'll like literally jump people, you know, and then act like that's hardcore or some shit. Group of like 5 to 8 guys fucking with dudes, you know, going smacking drinks out of some random's hand at a fucking at an event. It's weird, man, and it is bitch. It is bitch. Okay, if you've ever been jumped before, dude, you know that that's bitch shit. I've been jumped by 3 adults when I was 14 years old, and you know what? All those guys are fucking pussies. Okay, not only were they adults, they used police like telescopic batons, and there was 3 of them. It's pussy to do that. Okay, it just is. Schaub's right, and that is what Nate Diaz and his whole crew is about. This is what I mean. Like, he acts like he's in the streets, even though he's not been a part of that life ever. That's why he got into jiu-jitsu and fighting, was to stay out of trouble, you know. So it's weird that he still acts like that. Either way, let's jump ahead about a minute here. 13, oh, that will work. 13:06. Okay, another short clip here.
Tough's not making fun of somebody because they get emotional about their friend having major fucking side effects for dedicating their life to MMA. Tough isn't getting on there and tweeting to people to get his fan base to bully him, cyberbullying, because no one would ever say anything in person. And again, if this pisses you off, or you and I cross paths wherever it's at, you, solo, one-on-one, you're not going to do shit. That's the reality. The whole Stockton slap, I will fuck you up. Now, you'll get your boys to do the shit, to do all that. That ain't real manly shit, dude. But you and your fan base in Stockton, yeah, look at them. 10 of them against Schaub. Bullshit, dude. You ain't going to do shit. Again.
Damn, dude. So, it's weird, it's weird seeing Brendan Schaub like this. He's taken so much shit over the years, and like I said earlier, fucking 95% of it is deserved. The lawsuits against the, you know, the unique guy on YouTube, even his attitude change from earlier Fighter in the Kid episodes, like I talked about earlier, dude, there's still episodes. Now, some of them he's away for, and it's guest, but you know, there's earlier Fighter in the Kids episodes that I will listen to from time to time as I'm working on something because I find them hilarious, okay, and they're fun. And he was a lot more humble and shit like that, and he wasn't constantly pushing alcohol or nicotine and like all these other things, right? He wasn't lying constantly on his show, so it was different, man. So over the years, a lot of the shit he's gotten is completely and totally deserved. But we've never seen him act like this. Maybe that's why. Maybe he knows oftentimes he's in the wrong and he still tries to play the victim just to, you know, save face or whatever. But we've never seen him lash out like this. Even with Kalila, who, look, I mean, if you go deep into that story, Brendan Schaub's in the wrong for a lot of it, right? They like tricked Bobby Lee into calling or to talking on the phone with some fucking agent or some shit, so they could just yell at him, basically. But Kalilah was very clearly being sneaky and disgusting and whatever. Also, I'm pretty sure they made up that shit about having an investigator that showed that Bobby Lee was the one that started the subreddit. But either way, dude, that's not the video for this, okay? It's just, you know, we've never seen him react like this. Not with the Mark Harley shit, not with the Bobby Lee shit, not with the Kalilah shit, not with the Unique shit, not with literally fucking any of it. Maybe it's just all bottled up and eventually couldn't hold it in any longer.
In the room is guys do have some issues. Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody. I feel like I don't. I don't know if you do. I'm not getting get on here and make fun of you. None.
Bro, what did he just say?
This and UFC this. I love Dana. I love the UFC, bud. The elephant in the room is guys do have some issues. Not everybody. I'm not saying everybody. I feel like I don't.
Maybe he's not as self-aware as I thought. I don't know. Either way.
I don't know if you do. I'm not getting get on here and make fun of you. None of that shit. I don't know if your brother actually has it either. He has some issues. I don't know if it's from that. I don't know you guys well enough. But what I do know is you're not going to do shit. That I can guarantee you. You're not going to do shit. And if you want to, I'm not hard to find, bud. But it better be one-on-one. Don't do that pussy Stockton stuff where you jump guys. And if you do decide to jump me, it better be more than fucking 4 to 5.
Jesus Christ, you know. Holy shit. This guy, dude, he's on a fucking roll right now. He's right. He brings up them jumping guys again. Better bring more than 4 or 5, because oftentimes Nate Diaz is running around with dudes who, you know, maybe were good at one point, like Jake Shields or some shit, or are not very good, like Chris Avila or whatever his name is. He's fought in Bellator and shit. He's not had a very successful MMA career, but oftentimes they're around his size. So maybe Schaub is literally saying, I'm gonna beat up the 4 dudes you bring with you, so it better be more than fucking that. Okay, crazy levels of anger coming from Schaub. Although I will point out, you know, he completely walked back those claims that he started off with. So maybe he's starting to cool down a little bit here, right? Because he said, I don't know if your brother's got CTE, but earlier he straight up said, your brother's got CTE and he's dealing with all these issues. But now he's kind of walked it back a little bit. But it's just fucking crazy seeing him like this. I've never seen him, you know, defend himself, I guess, in the way that he's doing right now, or going at somebody the way that he's doing right now. He usually tries to pretend like I'm not that. He's like Mike Tyson when he like, I'm a different person now. I don't want to fight no more. No, don't make me bring out the beast. Brendan Schaub's beast got fucking released. Okay, either way, let's go.
Get your ass whooped again. What are you gonna do? You barked up the wrong tree, bud. You're a fucking praying mantis barking at a tiger walking through the fucking jungle. Don't make me.
Dude, he just made me choke on my fucking spit. What, bro? Yeah, a praying mantis barking at a tiger in the jungle. Of course, Brendan Schaub would refer to himself as a tiger. Okay, that's 1. 2, praying mantises don't fucking bark. I get what he's going for here, but this is you know, this is why Schaub stopped comedy, okay? Because his ability to come up with analogies or metaphors or anything like that, they're not very good. They're not very good. A praying mantis barking at a tiger in the jungle. I don't even know that. I mean, gosh, I know there's, you know what? I know there's different kinds of praying mantises. I've seen some in Washington State. I don't even know that there are praying mantises in the jungle. Maybe there are. But they sure as fuck don't bark. Okay. But yes, Papa is a tiger. Okay, Papa is a tiger. Now let's get to the last clip. We are finally here, boys. Okay, finally here. One last dig at Nate Diaz that I thought was noteworthy, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay.
You ain't him. You ain't shit. What are you gonna do? Submit me from your guard? You haven't advanced in 15 fucking years. You can't wrestle. You can't check leg kicks. What are you gonna do, Nate? I'd love to hear it, bud. Nothing. You can do nothing. You might get on Twitter. Oh, shut up.
Now look, he's kind of right about Nate Diaz not evolving. Although it hasn't, I mean, it hasn't really hindered his career a whole lot, but he's not, dude, Nate Diaz, I know he's had crazy fights and all the rest of it, but oftentimes the reason they're crazy fights are because they're super competitive and he's taking a fuck ton of damage, okay? Even in his last fight in the UFC when he submitted Tony Ferguson, he looked like shit up until that point, up until Tony Ferguson decided to stick his head in the guillotine. Now, I will point out one little bit of misinformation from Schaub here. Nate Diaz can check leg kicks sometimes. Okay, he checked one against Anthony Pettis that injured Pettis, and then Nate went on to beat the shit out of him, right? But again, I get what he's saying. He's not evolved as a fighter in the last 15 years. And I think the reason he said 15 years was because that was when Brendan Schaub retired and all the rest of it. And Nate Diaz is just getting older. And usually when you see guys get older, you see them amend their style a little bit, become a little bit safer in their approach. A good example of this is Alistair Overeem, who unironically is a more accomplished fighter than Nate Diaz. Either way. Earlier in his career, in K1 and even early MMA and even in the UFC, was more than willing to strike with dudes, right? Towards the end of his career, you started seeing him take guys down. You started seeing him turn his back and run away, literally, to safety. Because he didn't want to take any more damage that he's already taken, because he had taken a fuck ton. Okay? And what's crazy is I didn't even think of Alistair Overeem, dude. He took a lot of damage. That dude can speak perfectly. And that's not to say that the other guys are lying either. That's just to say that the contrast between some of these guys, even when taking comparable damage, is pretty fucking crazy. But overall, dude, listen, overall, I think Brendan Schaub is fucking correct about Nate Diaz. And like I said in the opening, I'm not a fan of Schaub. I don't fucking like him. Okay? I don't. But I think he's right here. And I can say that unbiasedly, despite me not liking him. I think that Nate Diaz oftentimes is very cringe in his fake gangster shit. Like I said, he's got funny lines and all the rest of it, but I think oftentimes people think he's cool because he's doing stupid shit that you would do as a teenager, and you're like, oh, look at that. You know, but the jumping dudes, gay. It is, dude. It's fucking cringe, and it's bitch. And I think that if Brendan Schaub and Nate Diaz were to fight, Brendan Schaub would probably kill him, you know. And again, it might be a hot take, because Nate Diaz fought a lot better competition than Schaub did, at least for a longer period of time. But oftentimes when you look at the guys that Nate Diaz fought and, you know, that were actually like elite, or elite at some point, he lost to, you know. So I think Schaub calling him out for this was a good thing to do. Although it is a little unhinged that he ranted for 20 fucking minutes over 6 words, you know. But I think, like we were talking about earlier, I think maybe this is just all the over the years bottled up shit that he knew he was in the right for this one, because he was vulnerable in a moment and Nate Diaz made fun of him for it. So it probably triggered something else in him that maybe these other people hadn't. And also, you know, what are you gonna make fun of me because I'm upset that my boy is having issues and wants to fucking, you know, end himself or whatever, you know? So anyways, that's it, dude. This was a fun topic to cover. We're a little over an hour. Something to drone out to while you're gaming or whatever it may be. I'll put timestamps in here. Like, subscribe, all that good shit. I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.